But nobody tells you how to find your purpose. Like, nobody really gives you the blueprint, especially when you've grown in a family or in a bloodline where you've just watched people do what they had to do to survive. And then once you have the privilege to tap into different parts of yourself, you kind of just keep throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And I feel like I had a lot of examples of what I didn't want in life, but I didn't have a lot of examples of what I did want. So through a lot of trial and error, I had to find my own way. And also, I won't say I'm hard-headed. I like to call it heart-driven. So a lot of times, the advice that people would give to me, if it didn't feel right, I wasn't going to listen. And it wasn't about me just rebelling for the sake of rebelling. Like I said, I'm heart-driven. So if my heart's not in whatever they're telling me to do, I'm not going to do it. And if my heart is calling to something else, it don't got to be the opposite of what they're telling me. Because like I said, I'm not rebelling for the sake of rebellion. I feel like I have to live in my truth. And I didn't have the language for that, obviously. But I've been sensitive to what that feels like since a child. And somebody imposing their will on me. I don't like that. Like I said, I didn't really have a blueprint or instructions on what it looks like when you find yourself. I was kind of just winging it in a way. And just following what made sense to me, even when it didn't make sense to others. Going to college, for example, everybody was like, oh, you want to get a major that's going to make you some money, right? That's what people say. But I'm like, all the majors that get you money is not my field of specialty. I wasn't motivated by money. So some people, they kind of find their way by allowing financial gain to be their compass. That is a hint at privilege too, to even be able to say I wasn't driven by money. I was like, I can either go to school for film composition, zoology, or something like English. Those were 3 things that I was passionate about and that I was good at. I loved animals, and not just like domesticated pet animals. I was fascinated by the natural world, and I've always valued the earth. Writing, reading, etc., etc. And music was always my specialty, specifically soundtracks, because I grew up a Disney baby. But also, once I got older, I started watching movies, and I started to recognize that I can tell what's about to happen in the movie based on how it makes me feel, the music in the movie. I would leave the movie theaters after watching a movie feeling motivated, feeling profound, probably by the storyline, but I would have the songs stuck in my head. Not like a theme song that somebody is singing, like the score would be stuck in my head, and that's what's moving me. You know what I mean? So I realized that these things mattered to me, and I was going to pursue them. I got to college. This is where the trial and error kicked in. They don't have my film scoring degree or major. So I'll go in for English. Maybe I'll be an English teacher, because I wasn't opposed to that either. Because my English teachers were always my, like, safe havens. Maybe I'll be somebody's English teacher. And then I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. And I switched my major to arts technology. It's the perfect major for content creation, because they teach you video editing. They teach you sound design. They teach you graphic design. They teach you, like, fundamentals of art. I had a vocal class. All of these creative things, right? Also during this time, I'm writing papers on the side. That's my side hustle. Everybody who wants me to write their paper has me writing philosophy papers. I'm enjoying it though. Like I told y'all, I love English. So I think in arts tech, what I was realizing was I wasn't turning in my assignments. I was having a hard time picking a creative idea and seeing it through to fruition. And I was desperately missing words. So then I realized, like, okay, I can't get too deep in the art bag. That's not right either. I take a philosophy class, and the philosophy director comes to the class, and he's telling us a lot of people who score the highest on the LSAT graduated with the philosophy degree. People with philosophy degrees go to the CIA, and they go this and that. So then I'm like, oh, I can be an environmental lawyer. I've always been good with words. I've always been a good debater. I'm thinking the lawyer route makes sense for me. Like, okay, I'm gonna go do philosophy, because I love to think. I'm just an inquisitive person. I love that there's no wrong answer. I found my heart in philosophy. I also got to the point in college where I was like, if I'm gonna get out of this shit alive, I gotta pick something I actually like. So when I told people I was switching my degree to philosophy, they're like, what are you gonna do with that? Because a lot of degrees in college it puts you on a specific path. I like to say there's 2 different types of majors in college. Skill-based majors and career-based majors. Career-based majors are the ones that tell you exactly what you're going to end up doing based on the major that you had. Like a nursing major is going to be a nurse. An accounting major is going to be an accountant. Degrees like philosophy, all the ologies, philosophy, sociology, anthropology, stuff like that gives you a skill set and allows you to view the world through a lens. And then you have to kind of like develop other specialties to align with your career. You're kind of cultivating your career around your skill set. So when people are like, oh, what are you going to do with a philosophy major? I'm like, well, there's a few things I could do with it. It's just up to me. I did think I was going to go do be an environmental lawyer. I started studying for the LSAT, and then I applied to a couple internships, and I didn't get any of them, and I got a little discouraged. I did. While I was in school, I got a job at a grooming salon. Now, mind you, I have been working jobs since I was 16. So at this point, I'm like 19. I loved it. I was a bather. It did not feel like work. I was just playing with puppies all day. It was beautiful. Truly, it was beautiful. It was a brand new store. I was the first bather they hired. I was in college, so they didn't send me to Groomers Academy. But I did think about going. They tried to send me a couple of times. And I remember I asked somebody for advice whose wisdom I trusted. I asked them what I should do, and they said, don't forget why you're there. In that moment, I felt in me that something was off, but I did listen. Yeah, I'll leave that there. What I found in philosophy was my ability to think had expanded. I was questioning everything. I learned how to hear the underlying implications of what somebody's saying. I started to understand I can listen to one sentence and hear what is important to somebody. You can listen for people's contradictions. You can hear for what really matters to somebody, what's irrelevant to somebody. You can hear somebody's deepest fear and what they're trying to avoid just in the way that they phrase a statement, just in the way that they propose a question. That is what I learned in philosophy. I can even hear it in myself, how much that shit got me going. And it became almost impossible to interact with people in different ways because now I'm questioning myself when I'm talking. I would write papers and I loved feedback. So I would always write my papers, and I had this one professor. He always gave me either a B+ or an A-. And I went to his office hours so many times like, how do I get an A+? How do I impress you? How? Not even just about how do I impress you. It's like, what am I missing? To this day, he was personality-wise not my favorite professor. But as far as like sharpening me, my favorite professor, because he challenged me and it made me better. I had a professor that praised me and that made me feel like the star of the class, always valued my opinion and discussions. I was grateful to have that professor, and this all came because they could tell I cared. They knew I was passionate about deeper understanding and explaining myself better. They could tell I wanted to be better. I think they just showed up with me differently, and through their different teaching styles, I was receptive to the criticism and the feedback. Mind you, I wouldn't have found my way into philosophy if I didn't pivot when I knew I needed to. You know what I mean? Some people will be like, oh, I chose this major and I already started. My credits might not apply if I do this, if I switch. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have to do an extra semester. That's just what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to take out another loan for the extra semester. That's just what I'm going to have to do. These were things that didn't make sense to people. I remember when I said I'm switching my major to philosophy, they're like, okay. And I can give people a bullshit plan that I know I'm going to do. In reality, I didn't know what I was going to do. But in that moment, I knew I needed to do it. So I did. And the one thing I will say about this whole process of finding my purpose, the hardest truth was recognizing really what it means to follow your heart. It means being wrong and accepting that you're wrong. Because if I can't trust what you're telling me, experience is the best teacher for me. You're telling me what worked for you based on your qualities, what you want out of life, your life experiences, what's important to you, what you don't want, how you think, how you move, how you assert your will. You're telling me what worked for you based on all of that. And all of that is completely different for me. Maybe like 2 or 3 things might be similar, but most of that is different. I cannot trust you 100% and not trust myself. Finding your purpose, being heart driven, means testing your intuition over and over and over and doing something because it feels right, and then having to see everything fall and crumble and recognizing that that feeling that you thought was right is not what it means to be right. So now when that feeling comes up again, you can recognize, last time I felt like that, it got me here. So this is the feeling that comes when I'm not supposed to do it. That only comes with experience. That only comes with trusting yourself in a moment where you were wrong. That only comes with trusting yourself, thinking you're 100% right only to be proven wrong. And that is why it's so important to make your own decisions. It's so important to find your own path. It's so important to make your own mistakes, to learn your own lessons, because that's how you build that self-awareness, that intuitive awareness. That's how you build self-confidence. That's how you move through the world, being your own sense of stability, your own sense of security, being your own compass, because you know how it feels to disregard that instinct and then wish you would have. You know how it feels to play into that instinct and be so glad that you did. You know how it feels to play into that instinct and think it was your intuition, whole time it was your inner critic misleading you. That's the only way you learn these discrepancies, is by trusting yourself to be okay, whether you fuck up, whether you win. You're going to be okay either way, because now you have the experience. Now you have the self-awareness, the intuitive awareness. Now you have that. Now you have that. That was one lesson that I had to learn throughout the process of finding my purpose. You can't beat yourself up for making mistakes. You're going to hit a point where you're going to be like, why didn't I know better? I should have known better. And that's where we're going now. That chapter in my life where I was upset that I didn't know better. Throughout a couple of years in college, I was in a relationship. The summer before my senior year of college, it ended. It was an unhealthy relationship, one-sided infidelity, and blah, 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 blah. Not gonna give too much power to it, not gonna give too much energy to it. But just know I felt betrayed intensely. But the biggest betrayal I felt was from myself. So by the end of it, I remember saying, like, I can't even mourn the relationship because that person isn't who I thought they were, because the person I thought they were wouldn't do that to me. So I'm not even grieving the relationship. I'm not even mourning the relationship. I'm mourning my pride, like my sense of self, the part, my confidence, the part of me that would never go for nothing like that. What in me allowed me to stay in a situation where I clearly wasn't valued for this long and this intensely? What did that? And I remember my friends kept asking me when I was in the relationship, what would it take for you to leave? And I did not know, because I was dealing with some shit. What I knew going through the relationship was, I can't end this until I'm ready to end it, because or else I'm going to create a pattern or a cycle. A woman can't leave a relationship until she's emotionally withdrawn, because she's going to start the cycle of going back and going back and going back and going back. And there was something in me that knew that. Mind you, this is my first adult relationship. This is my second relationship in my whole life. I don't know how I knew this stuff, but I did. I knew that if I ended it before I was emotionally turned off by the situation, I was going to create a pattern that I did not want to live in. So me and this person split. And I felt so much heartbreak. I didn't even feel like they broke my heart. I felt like I broke my own heart, because I betrayed myself by staying in that situation as long as I did. And I was mad at myself for not knowing better, for knowing better and not doing better in the situation. I was mad at myself for not being emotionally turned off sooner. And my esoteric friend, I talked to her one day. She's like, you know what time you were born? And she looked at my birth chart. It's like 2018. She told me a few things, but she's like, just go to this link and do it, and you read it for yourself. I read it for myself. Y'all, when I tell you, I felt like I had just did the thing for the first time. That's how enlightened I felt. I was like, oh my gosh. For example, growing up, I had been told I talk too much. You know that song, you talk too much and you never shut up. You talk too much and you never shut up. My cousins used to sing that to me when I was younger. I look at my birth chart and it tells me that I have Mercury, the planet of information, conversation, intellect, and ideas, running my shit. Mercury is all up and through my chart. I had no choice but to talk like this. No choice. That's when I was like, oh, this is real. It told me I had a physical presence that demanded attention. I've always had a body that either got judged, objectified, sexualized, a body that attracted more attention than I wanted. It's just telling me things that I've experienced. Mind you, I grew up believing in astrology. I remember growing up, my favorite movie was The Lion King, and I found out I was a Leo and the sign was a lion. I had to be like 10. And I was so geeked. I was like, oh, this gotta be real. Because why else would I love a lion if I wasn't a Leo? When I was younger, I started meditating. My friends were all Christians, obviously, so it was a joke that I was a Buddhist. And I would talk about chakras and meditation, and that's when I was in middle school. Now everything is coming together. I'm going through this breakup. My heart is shattered. I realized I lost myself in this relationship. I kept saying, I realized you can't love somebody. You can't create self-love by loving everybody else so deeply. You can't love somebody into loving yourself. And in this heartbreak, I didn't want to sit in it. I went back to everything that I used to do. I went back to things that I enjoyed as a kid. I didn't even know what inner child work was at the time. I was just doing stuff. I was like, if I don't want to be consumed by this love, I have to go back to my first loves. I also knew that I was going to have to step away from the environment that the relationship was cultivated in, and I came back to my hometown for the summer. I started meditating again. I started reading books again. The first book I read was A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I had been talking about doing shrooms. My friends were all anti-shrooms. I was like, please, y'all, we need to find the mushrooms. Then Janae dropped Trip, and I was like, we need the shrooms. I told y'all niggas we need the shrooms. I told y'all. Towards the end of this relationship, I did some shrooms. I know I'm all over the place, y'all, but I hope you find what I'm saying. At the end of this relationship, I started going back to everything I was before. Everything. Literally, I had to start from scratch because I was heartbroken. And I did not want to be heartbroken. So I was like, let me go back to everything I loved before this. What did I do? I picked the guitar back up. I started playing my guitar again. I started writing songs. The first song I ever wrote was to write me out of the heartbreak emotion. No games. First song I ever wrote to write me out of the heartbreak emotion. That's when I dove into astrology, and I'm like, okay, if this is my chart, let me read other people's charts. I wanted to see what made my chart different from other people's charts. They felt like it was as accurate to them as mine was to me. So I dive into a lot of things that resonate with me as a kid. I did chakra work. I started meditating again. I started making music again. I started journaling. I did start journaling during arts tech because that's what they asked us to do, and I've realized how much I enjoyed it. So I had just been carrying it until this point. So at this point, I've been documenting the evolution of my mind, of my mindset throughout this relationship. So now I'm rereading everything. In the midst of me meditating, reading this book, falling back in love with music, doing shrooms, now I'm revisiting the headspace I was in when I was going through this heartbreak. This is how I found my purpose. By going through shit and allowing myself to go through it. I remember the most profound thing I took out of that breakup was, you just gotta feel it, bro. You have to let yourself feel this. The best way to heal through this is dropping into the emotion when you have it, not judging yourself for having the emotion, letting yourself have the emotion and letting yourself evolve out of it. And I did that. The days I wanted to cry, I did not make myself feel bad, like, oh, you've cried so much, you cried too much, oh, you cried so much, oh, you're so sad, why are you so sad? I didn't do none of that. I just let myself feel it. So you gotta think. At this point, I don't know my purpose. I'm not even thinking about my purpose. I'm just thinking about healing. Then I graduate, once I followed my own way, and then I found astrology and it validated my experiences, I realized I'm a thinker. I think for myself. I'm an individual thinker. I'm an analyzer. I'm a reflector. I am introspective. Then I realized with mushrooms and my mindset, it's like, I am spiritual. I see value in multiple religions. People try to label me. And I'm like, I've never resisted God. I've never resisted Christianity. I never was offended by church. I never resisted going to church. I end up moving to Atlanta. And so I'm isolated from environments that I'm familiar with. I've never lived here. I used to go to Georgia to spend time with my cousins and my auntie for the summer, but I've never lived there. That's always been my goal. I finally get there. I'm inspired because I'm in an environment where everything feels new to me because I've never experienced this as an adult. And I get this book, What Eastern Mind, Western Soul. The introspection goes up a notch. Now I'm not only meditating on my chakras, I'm journaling them. I'm recognizing where your root chakra, when your root chakra gets imbalanced, when your sacral chakra gets imbalanced. I'm going deep into every chakra, like, how did these get imbalanced? That I got to see what life experiences I had that impacted me in a way that rewired my brain and who I am, at what I value and how I think about stuff. Now I'm becoming familiar and aware of how I've been conditioned. Now I'm recognizing the ways that I have been acting in alignment with other people's visions for me, and the moments where I have rejected the visions that I have for myself. Gotta give myself some credit. There were times where I went against the grain and I still did things that I wanted to do, but there were also ways that I was people pleasing. There were ways that I was just trying to make sure I was doing what felt right to other people so I could still be accepted. That's when the introspection really happened. At this point, I'm doing shadow work. I don't know that it's called shadow work, but at this point I'm doing shadow work. I'm like, okay, now I'm learning the ways that I have learned to be in order to be accepted. So you got to think, I just came out of a season of doing inner child work to heal this part of myself and from this love in this relationship. Then I go into this part of shadow work where I'm learning the parts of myself that I have silenced and suppressed to be accepted. Where I'm learning how I've been conditioned to behave based on what my family, what society, what my community valued, and how sometimes that meant me silencing myself. At this point, I'm trying to figure out what career I'm going to take, what angle I'm going to go. I did say I'm going to start posting my philosophy things online. I want internet money. This is like 2020. I want internet money. I want internet money. I'm going to start posting YouTube videos. I think that's what everybody was saying. So that was another thing. Kept asking myself questions, and this is when I would joke and say, I don't know if philosophy helped me or hurt me, because now I'm questioning everything. Why do I want to post on YouTube? Is it because I have something to say, or is it because this is what everybody is doing, and I just want to do what everybody's doing? And I've always been anti-trends. So I remember one day my aunt and I are talking. She asks me, she's always nudged me to walk my own path. One thing my aunt always said was, find something that comes natural to you, and then find something you care about and what the world needs, and put that all together, and that's your purpose. I think I understood what she was saying, but I was still confused, because growing up I was like, I want to make music, but I feel like I want to make a difference. I don't want to just make music. I don't want to just make people feel. I want to make a difference. And making music just doesn't feel like it doesn't feel big enough for my path. It's not enough. And so one day I told her, okay, I'm not going to go to law school, but I'm going to go to school to be a mediator. She's like, why? Because of where I fall in the family and who I've been in my friend groups and how I show up in the world, I feel like I've been constantly been put in the position of being a mediator. Because in my friend groups, I can always understand everybody's point of view and help her get her, who get her, who get her. In my household, I can always understand everybody's point of view. Help her, help her, help her, help her. And at a job place, I can always understand everybody's point of view. Help her, help her, help her. Mediation is how I'm going to get there. And she's like, yeah, you'll probably be good at mediation, but you will be good at a lot of things. But instead of picking something that you will be good at, because you will be good at a lot of stuff, pick something that you will be excited to wake up and do every day. This is a privilege to be able to do this, but I think when our parents make sacrifices for us, it's so the next generation can live in alignment with making an impact, with extending the legacy in a way that is more than just working the job. I think my auntie saw in me something that I didn't see in myself, and she's seen that in many people, and she brought the best out of many people for that reason. And the day she said that, this was also when I was thinking about studying astrology, but I didn't know any astrologers. I thought when I was in college, I was taking an astrology course. I was so excited to learn about Aries and Pisces and Aquarius and Leos and Cancers, and it was astronomy. We learned about fucking quantum physics. We didn't even learn quantum physics because it was only the first step. I was learning the law of Newton, or whoever, Newton's law, and all of them niggas. Like, what? So I started to put all of that together. I started asking myself, like, what comes naturally to me? I started asking myself, like, how has all of these life experiences all come together to bring me to this point? Because not only that, I'm also somebody who has had such a good, strong work ethic. Then I realized that my work ethic don't make me valuable. So my willpower to show up consistently and authentically at a job place dwindled once I realized that they didn't value me for real. And my value is not determined on how well I work for a company that don't value me in the first place. That ruined me, because now showing up to jobs was harder. Because I wasn't going to jobs for the money solely. I was going to jobs because it made me feel like I was fulfilling a purpose. Because it made me feel like I was helping a team. I was contributing to a purpose that was bigger than me, regardless of what it was. Whether it was working back in the inventory, whether it was putting clothes on the floor, whether it was it was just the fact that I was a part of a group and I was fulfilling a role within the group that made me feel purposeful. Once I realized my role in that group was not that valuable, it changed the way that I showed up. And then I was like, oh fuck. I got to the point where I was having stomach aches because that's how bad I didn't want to go to work. I was having migraines. That's how bad I didn't want to go to work. And I was like, nobody else is struggling like that. Like, am I crazy? Like, everybody can go to work, no problem. Everybody can go to work and pay the bills, no problem. Then it's not this deep to them. Why is this so deep to me? Then I got a job that didn't require that. I got paid basically to show up and be myself. And I got really good money for that. And it lasted for a while. I was helpful. I was contributing. I was basically like an assistant. But I naturally have assistant energy. It just worked for me. I felt like I was getting paid to just be who I was. And I actually could feel that I was valuable. And then that job ended. So you can imagine if you are working a job where you're basically getting paid to be yourself for like how long? Maybe like 3 years, 4 years. You're getting really good money. It's a remote job. You get paid a daily wage, whether you show up and work 8 hours a day, whether you show up and work no hours in a day. You're just getting paid to be available. Once that job ends, how do you go back to what you were used to? How do you go back to living normally? So much had changed at this point. I was suffering kind of because I was feeling so much resistance inside of myself to go back into a space where I didn't feel valued. It's not like I really valued the money. I just felt like I was going against myself to not live in alignment with things that worked for me. And at this point, this is when content started booming. Like, people were making bank off of TikTok. People were making bank off of YouTube. I was still trying to do things the way that would get me guaranteed money. I was still trying to do the worldly jobs. By worldly, I just mean physical world jobs. Show up and go be a server, go be a dog groomer, go be an assistant, go do all of these normal jobs when I had felt like I had already garnered all of these skills that I could put together and put out into the world and share with people. I had been through things that I internalized and was introspective about. I had been such a mediator, such a non-judgmental person that I was welcomed into people's lives in a way where they let me see their most vulnerable moments. They let me hear their deepest, darkest secrets. They let me into the most vulnerable, darkest parts of themselves and showed me a side of life that I hadn't seen before. And I was able to hold space for them and help them understand themselves more deeply. Introducing astrology, talking to them about their inner child, talking to them about shadow work, helping them see the ways that society is not wired to benefit them based on what I know to be true about their chart and based on what is natural to them and all the inner resistance. Because life is not this. Life does not have to be you pushing against this force and this tide the whole time and you fighting resistance and blah, 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 blah. Eventually it gets to that point sometimes when we're not honoring ourselves enough. But when we break the pattern of not honoring ourselves and only doing what society has told us is acceptable and appropriate, we reach a new level within ourselves. And that's where I'm at now. Where I realized that not acting in alignment with all of the values and all of my passions and all of the skills that I've garnered, not using those was hurting me more than it was helping me. And that's where I found my purpose. I found my purpose by feeling the dissonance, by questioning, by trying, by failing, by loving and by hurting and by surrendering. This isn't something that I just woke up and decided to do. I hit rock bottom. I've been in debt. I had to move back in with my parents, sell everything. So now I'm just showing up. I'm being obedient to the calling that Spirit has for me. I'm embodying what I know to be true. My purpose is to hold hearts, heal connections, connect people more deeply with themselves, with people they have soul contracts with, whether they love them or they don't. Connect people to the world around them, the world that we came from, the earth. And reconnect people with spirit and source. And you start and you do all of that by starting with yourself. And I do this by sharing my journey, sharing my insight, sharing my philosophies, showing how I live my life, telling people what I've been through, and listening and guiding people through that as well. Oftentimes, I would come into people's lives and I would think I was the tornado. I remember saying that, like, I just feel like a tornado. Every time I come into someone's life, everything starts changing. Like, they start getting, it's like all this transformation that starts happening. And I'm like, damn, I just got here. Do you see my tattoo? I got that because one thing that is constant in life is change. It's the only thing that's constant in life is change. I recognize that through my own life. I also recognize that through the role that I play in other people's lives. And instead of me feeling like I was the bad guy, I was like, oh no, I'm not triggering this change. I'm helping facilitate the change. This change is requiring you to meet a part of yourself that you haven't met before. Go deep into a part of yourself that you haven't went into before. I'm here to help you do that. I'm here to show you that it's okay to do that.